This is the fourth and current generation of Kohler Dexter urinal that's been made since circa 1998 or 1999. While this is a fairly common urinal and most people find this urinal to be fairly boring, is it that bad though? Yeah, it might be a forgettable urinal, but does it necessarily make it a bad urinal? Well, let's find out today. The overall design is pretty plain from at least the front. It's just a triangular shape. But on the side, it's pretty interesting. Below it, you can see the trapway and how it's formatted. And it does have some interesting designs on the side. Though, in all honesty, outside the interesting design, I don't think it's anything too special. The trapway opening is just a rectangular shape with a siphon jet at the bottom, and there are the rim jets right there. Just only a few. Let's have a look at a flush. For a siphonic urinal, it has a very blowout-like flush. I don't mind it though. In terms of functionality, this urinal's pretty alright. It does its job fairly well and does as it's supposed to. However, I will mention that sometimes these urinals can get out of order more frequently than others. I would not say it's as bad compared to the second gen or third gen American Standard Allbird urinals, which are more common for getting more out of order. But I will say, this does have its bad moments every now and then, though thankfully not too common. Let's have a look at bowl rinse. Despite only having 4 rim jets, the bowl rinse is actually pretty fine. I will say though, due to the design of this urinal, I do think some areas do get missed, especially towards the front here, where it's not supposed to really reach. Though there are 2 rim jets that do reach out to the sides, which is pretty nice. Though due to the design of this urinal, I do definitely think some areas would be missed. And that's all there is to say about the 4th generation Kohler Dexter urinal. Yeah, it's pretty plain and nothing too interesting, but it does have some interesting design elements and definitely one of the better siphonic urinals made to this day. For a modern urinal, it's definitely not too bad, but it does have some drawbacks here or there, though not as bad as some others. But let's grade this urinal and see how it goes into the grading scale. The overall design of the Kohler Dexter urinal of this generation is interesting to say the least. From having neat accents on the side to the triangular shape that it has, it's very interesting for its time, considering this was made in the late 1990s. However, outside the weird shape and stuff, there really isn't much else to talk about. It gets a 6. The flush honestly is not bad. On higher pressures, it honestly acts like a blowout urinal, even though technically speaking, this is siphonic. It's quite interesting and I give it a 7. The rim rinse seems pretty decent, honestly. The only problems I see is the front areas, which it can't really reach. Outside of that, it actually covers it fairly well for only having 4 rim jets. I give it a 7. Honestly, for its time, this urinal is pretty decent for a siphonic urinal. With urinals like the Allbird falling off, it's nice to see a urinal like this hold its own. Sure, it'll have its moments here or there, but it's nowhere near as bad as, say, something like the Allbird. It's a fairly decent urinal and actually holds up fairly well, so I give it a 7 in functionality. Let's talk about the overall value of this urinal and see if it's worth getting today. For most people, this urinal seems fairly forgettable. But does that necessarily mean it's bad? Far from it. Honestly, for its time, this urinal is fairly decent and actually has its fairly interesting quirks every now and then. From the design, to the blowout-like flush, to a fairly decent effectiveness. The only downsides I can really think of is the urinal design being not so great for front covering of rinse, and maybe the occasional clog here or there, but it's nowhere near as bad as the Allbird of the 90s to 2000s, or even a modern Allbird. I definitely think this is probably one of the better urinals made today that is siphonic. For the overall value, I give it a 7. The final score of the 4th generation Kohler Dexter urinal is a 34 out of 50, which translates to a 68 out of 100. Just because this urinal gets common and boring after a while does not necessarily mean it's a bad urinal. This urinal definitely has its interesting quirks and design choices. Sure, it's not perfect, but in terms of modern siphonic urinals, it's definitely one of the better ones.